I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, and I'm using a random number generator to pick the next game. Last episode, we played Tiger Woods PGA Tour 06, and in this episode, we dove into a JRPG that I've always wanted to play, and we're playing Evolution Worlds. Evolution Worlds was released on December 2nd, 2002, and was developed by Sting Entertainment and published by Ubisoft. This game actually turned out to be very fun and enjoyable for a basic JRPG. Before we get started, make sure to like this video because it helps out the channel, and subscribe if you're new so you don't miss any of the future games. Without further ado, this is my experience with Evolution Worlds. In Evolution Worlds, we're going to go through the new game mode to consider this one complete. I wasn't aware when playing the game that this is actually two separate games combined together to make one game. This includes Evolution, the World of the Sacred Device, and its sequel, Evolution 2, Far Off Promise. I'm not sure why they were combined, but they did this when adding in English voice acting for the GameCube release. This was an interesting fact about the game, and I decided that I would split this into two parts. Basically, part 1 being the first game, and then part 2 being the second game. Let's talk about the plot for Evolution Worlds. Evolution Worlds follows our main characters, Mag Launcher and Linear Cannon, as they explore ancient ruins to excavate ancient tools called Psyframes. How this works is that only specific people can use Psyframes. These people are considered adventurers or Psyframe users. These users get jobs from the Society, which is a research group that hires adventurers to excavate the ruins and then pays them when the job is complete. Mag has two goals when going out on adventures. He has to pay the debt back that his family owes to the Society, and he and every other adventurer, even the army, are looking for the almighty Psyframe called Evolution. It's a big myth in the world and everyone is looking for it. Mag's father is missing and left a letter with Linear when she randomly showed up at their house asking Mag to watch over her. Linear is what I would call a white mage, with the ability to heal and cure status effects. She doesn't talk at all during much of this game, and that's pretty much it about her at this moment. Alright, that covers the story to get us started, but let's talk about gameplay. Evolution Worlds is very simple. We have an overworld called Pan Am Town, where we can heal, buy items and weapons, and even upgrade our Psyframes. We can also pick up party members from Pan Am that we can take with us into the dungeons. There are two types of dungeons in this game, some that are random and others that are predetermined, meaning that the dungeon is the same for everyone that plays the game. When we enter the dungeon, we can walk around and slowly reveal the map, collect treasure chests, avoid traps on the floor, and fight enemies. When we encounter an enemy, we're taken into a turn-based battle system where we take turns attacking each other. The characters can attack normally, use FP for skills and talents, use items, move the character forward and backwards, defend, or try to escape the battle. The most important thing to talk about here is moving the character because it affects the battle more than anything else in the game. When moving a character, we can have them move into the front row, the middle row, or the back row. Each row comes with its own set of pros and cons. The front row allows for us to deal out more damage, but we take more damage from attacks. The middle row is balanced for attack and defense, and the back row takes less damage and deals less damage, so it makes sense to plan where you want each character to be at based on their stats and skills. Our party and the enemies can move characters around using skills, talents, or items, so we can draw an enemy with high defensive stats to the front, and then we can do more damage to them to end the fight. It usually doesn't get to be that bad, but if you're struggling with an enemy, it's probably best to bring them forward for some additional damage, or moving them back so they don't dish out as much damage. Alright, that covers the basics of the game, so let's move into our experience with Evolution Worlds. The game opens with us going through a basic dungeon to show us how to play the game. We're looking for a treasure for the Society, so we're just making our way through the area. This is what I would consider the tutorial of the game. After completing the dungeon, we make it to the end, and we actually find the treasure we're looking for. But in the process, we set off some lasers, and we have to move back from it. This allows for our rival adventurer Chain Gun to fly in on her jetpack and take the treasure for herself. She runs her mouth about us for a while. She's what I would call very confident about her abilities. She is recruitable for future missions and uses a jetpack missile frame that doesn't do much damage to individual targets, but her skills can cause a lot of damage to all the enemies on the other side of the battlefield. Since we didn't get the treasure for the dungeon, we failed the assignment and make 0 money for this mission. We then head back to the mansion on the north side of Pan Am Town to let our butler / father figure know that we failed our assignment. His name is Grenade, because play on weapons for names of the characters is this game. He tells us about the history of the family and that we're not living up to the expectations that our father left for us. I covered this in the story breakdown, but our father was a super famous adventurer who mysteriously went missing one day. He then insults us to our face, but looking in the other direction. Gray can come to dungeons with us and uses a rifle / shotgun that he uses to attack, and his skills and talents revolve around making Mag stronger in battle, which comes in handy later in the game. He tells us that he will come with us for the next assignment from the society, and then we decide that we need to go there now and get a new assignment to make up for the one that was not successful at all. When we arrive at the society, we run into another character that we can bring with us into dungeons. It's a blonde woman that uses a bazooka frame, but also is very useful at healing the party in a pinch. She's a very experienced adventurer, and if we bring her along and complete a mission, she will take half of the money we get for completing it. Her name is Pepperbox, which is a very unusual name, but I guess it works for this game. We receive a new set of runes that we can explore, and then the city opens up for us to run around in. This is Pan Am Town, and it's the hub for this section of the game. There is a shop we can buy items for in battle, and also new equipment to upgrade our character's stats in battle. Pretty standard JRPG stuff. We can also find all the possible members of the team that we can bring with us, and switch them out with whoever you want to bring along. You always keep Mag in the party since he's the main character of the game, and Linear because we need to protect her at all times. This leaves one spot open on the team, and we can pick any of the other 3 characters to complete their team. When we're ready to go to the runes, we take our family seaplane to fly ourselves there. I don't think these runes have a name, but some of the other ones have names attached to them later in the game. I decided to bring Gray with us at this point because I wanted to earn as much money as possible to buy some equipment from the shop. When navigating through the dungeons in the game, we have to find the steps that lead to the next floor of the dungeon. Sometimes they're right next to the beginning of the dungeon, and sometimes they're as far from the beginning as possible. I won't go too much into detail with the dungeons, because after the first floor they look the same until we finish the dungeon. Most of the dungeons just look like rocks everywhere anyways, so they're pretty boring as well. I like the game, but the level design for the dungeons ends up being a bit boring. Anyways, we get into our first encounter in the dungeon and find ourselves against 4 spiders. They're all in different rows, so we have to take them out one at a time and keep ourselves healed. The enemies you'll find in this dungeon are the Claymore, the Redback Widow, Popo Tribesman, and the Big Ben. None of these are very difficult to deal with either, so it's just a note. Once we make it to the 6th floor of the dungeon, we get our first boss fight of the game. This fight is with Mandoscus, a giant blue dragon lizard that only has 2 attacks. One being Earthquake that hits all the party members but only does around 70 damage at the current level that I was at, and Squash that does more damage but isn't anything that can't be dealt with. He also can just do nothing on some turns, which gives you free turns to do damage or to heal. The thing to point out in this fight is that healing is important because you'll never know when he'll get you with that Earthquake attack. Using the hammer frame for Mag is going to be the best option for the whole game because it's just so good. And also remember to just attack normally, defend or use items to get your FP back so you can use skills and talents. The last thing I wanted to point out is that the enemy's indicator on the side of the screen showing whose turn it is will flash red when it's getting close to dying. This happens for all enemies in the game, and then it will go solid red when the enemy is defeated. Sometimes this will help when you might think it's time to heal, but If the enemy's close to dying, then maybe you just all-out attack to end the fight. I think that covers this fight. It's an easy one, but one I would expect at the beginning of any JRPG. We get 600 to 800 XP for the fight, and 80 to 100 TP for winning. TP is used to unlock new skills and talents as we play the game, so it's important to fight enemies if you're trying to unlock all the skills in this game. Once we completed the dungeon, we go back to the society and get our money for completing the assignment. And Gray doesn't take any because he's our butler and he's a really nice dude. Now we're going to get a lot of story dump here, so I'll just cover everything that happens. When we get back to the mansion, we have a conversation with Gray about our father, and that he went missing and left Linear with us back then, and that he was looking for Evolutia like everyone else. So no new information that I haven't already talked about in the video. Then we wake up in the morning and find out the leader of the 8th Imperial Army was looking for us, but Gray told him we were still sleeping. We decide that we are going to head over there to talk to him, so Mag and Linear leave and end up meeting up with Eugene on his ship. Eugene is a bad guy. You can just tell from meeting him that he is up to no good. He's also very creepy. He asks us if we're hiding anything that our father might have brought back from adventuring, and we tell him that our father turned everything that he ever found into the society. He questions us a lot about it, but eventually tells us that we are no longer of any use anymore, and that we can just leave. He is a real jerk. Mag comments on how rude he is to us, and as we're leaving, he asks us to hand over Linear, because he thinks that she would like being a little maid for him. This is the creepy side of him coming out. She is a child, and that's gross. This man should not be in charge, not at all. We tell him no, and then leave because he's a creep. Once we leave, we get another cutscene of Eugene talking to his men. He talks about his plan of finding Evolutia, and they have a machine that can detect large and small uses of psi frames. They tell the society they're blocking off the runes, and they'll supervise everything moving forward. Eugene then makes another creepy comment about Linear, and it comes back to Mag and Gray talking about her as she stands outside playing the ocarina, of all things. He talks about how she was upset when she showed up until she played the ocarina, and that seemed to calm her down. We find out that she has the ability to heal things back to life, and she gives us an example on a flower outside of the house. Mag didn't realize that it was her healing things this whole time, and just thought they were getting new ones when the old ones died. It goes back to Eugene on the ship, and the machine picks up a huge psi frame use in Pan Am Town, and they narrow it down to the launcher's house. Being creepy as he is, he heads there right away. When he shows up there, Linear is outside playing the ocarina, and he tries to give her a bouquet of roses. Because like I said, he's weird and creepy. He makes a comment about how roses and women lose their beauty once they've blossomed, which confirms that Eugene would be on a list if he was a real person. Eugene deserves to be cancelled. He comes into the mansion, and Mag and Gray tell him about Linear's origins, and then he leaves. When he gets outside, he tells his men to capture her, and they agree and call him Your Highness, so this dude is a prince. I don't know where from, but he is a prince. That's the big story dump. Now we can go back to Pan Am Town, recruit Chain to join us on the next assignment, and then upgrade some of our gear, psi frame, skills, and get some new items to head into the dungeon. Then we head back to the seaplane and make our way to the next dungeon of the game. This dungeon is less rock looking, and it has more of a dirt floor and is browner inside, I guess, like more like dirt. Everything else is the same, but this is the new look of the dungeon. This dungeon is a bit harder and has more floors. This one has 11 floors, so it's going to take us much longer to get through this one. We can also find more than 4 enemies in this, so we can find the Redback Widows, the Popo Tribesmen, the Gambus, the Aishia, Perpatsis, Archoteric, Bacterio, Protocalus in this dungeon. And the levels range from 9 to 15 on the high end. The nice thing about this dungeon is that when we get to the 11th floor, we have the option to save the game on one side before the final boss, and we can leave the dungeon and head back to town on the other side. I didn't leave the dungeon because I felt like I was in good shape to fight whatever was going to get thrown at us, but I did save, and then I went into the boss fight. The next boss fight is at the nice level of 16 and looks like a giant mutated flower that can stand up and walk around. It's called Refraction. This is another boss fight that isn't going to be that hard as long as you've been taking out enemies along the way to the top floor of this dungeon. I'm starting this fight one level higher than the boss, so that's already an advantage, and we have the skills that Linear can cast on Mag to increase his strength, causing him to attack even harder. The attacks we need to watch out for in this fight are Tentacle, which is just a standard attack from the boss. It does hit solid, but nothing that can't be handled. The second attack that he does that can be a problem is called Paralysis Pollen. In this attack, he sprays us all with pollen that can cause status effects, such as paralysis, meaning our character can't move and we just have to take attacks. It also does damage to everyone in the party, so that's something else we have to worry about when he does this attack. I think this attack is the one that we need to worry the most about in this fight. He can also choose to do nothing like the boss before this one. I don't really know what that's for unless it's their way of recovering FP like we have to, but I'm not sure. This boss still isn't all that hard, and after a little bit of time, we're able to take him down by crushing him with a boulder. Once defeated, we get 900 to 1200 XP and 80 to 105 TP for winning the fight. Not too bad for the second boss fight of the game. When we get back to the mansion, we find that Eugene and his army have Gray captured, and he threatens to kill him if we don't hand over Linear. Gray, being awesome, tells us just to run away. He'll be fine. We leave and head down to the airport where the seaplane is. We're going to try to use this to escape from them. Then we're greeted with an FMV. This FMV is pretty interesting. I think it looks pretty good, but the characters look completely different from what they do in the game, which I find to be really strange. I think this might be because they just ported this directly from the Dreamcast version, but I'm not too sure. We can't fully escape because they're raining down tank shells on us, but Mag is doing his best to fight them off using his Psy-frame. But sadly, we can't do enough, and finally we have a bunch of shells land around us, and we pass out. When we wake back up, we're in our room, and Gray is there to tell us that they took Linear, and we decide that we're going to go save her before the army can leave. Pepper and Jane show up and say they don't agree with what they're doing, and that they will come with us to save her. So we have a full team that we can take to try and save her. We get down to the seaplane, and we're ready to go after her. It switches over to a cutscene where Eugene has Linear, and he tells her she needs to help him. Then he tells her that she is Evolutia, the ultimate weapon. That's the big reveal for this section, is that she is the Psy-frame that everyone has been looking for all these years. Then we get another FMV of us flying and avoiding shots from the army ship. It's a good one, but then we're able to finally land on the ship and move on to the next dungeon. Before that, we get to pick what team we want to bring with us, so I decided to pick Chain and Pepper because they're Psy-frame users and have more skills that can help us out in the next parts. This is the next dungeon now. It's called the 8th Imperial Army Ship, and we can encounter 4 different enemies in the area. The Infantry Soldier, Heavy Firearm Soldier, Rifle Soldier, and the Bomb Soldiers. Ranging from level 13 to level 16, there is only 4 soldiers in this section, so it's not that difficult to take them out. Once we get so far into the ship, we get to fight a mini-boss called the PKW-3, which is just a massive tank at level 18. I'm still a bit over-leveled at this point. The tank has 3 attacks that it will use during the fight. Charge Up, which leads to an attack called Fire, which does decent damage to everyone in the party. It's not that bad and you can prepare for it because of the turn it takes before attacking. Smash is the next attack it will use, where it slowly drives up to you and smashes you with the tank. I would think that this would do massive damage because the tank is being dropped on you, but it really doesn't do that much and isn't anything to worry about. Its last attack is called Machine Gun, but in the whole fight with PKW-3, it didn't use it, so I don't really know what that's all about. Anyways, this fight is no problem and we take it out, gaining 640 to 800 experience and 161 to 205 TP for that fight, which is rather high compared to everything else we have fought up to this point. After navigating through the rest of the ship, we come to the control room or throne room of the ship, and Eugene is sitting there waiting for us. He tells us that Linear has joined them and we should just leave. Mag tells him that he knows that she would never join him and that he demands that Eugene tells us where she is. He doesn't, and then we have to fight him for the first boss fight with him. This version of him is very easy and isn't anything to worry about. Eugene is level 19 in this fight and has a basic attack that he does with his sword. That, no joke, does 10 damage to our party at the same level. He also uses the attack Sternimhofen, and if I messed that up, I'm sorry. It's just a bunch of slashes with a sword that does a bit more damage, but still isn't anything you can't heal with pepper or an item to gain back. Eugene has a charge up move that allows him to use his pistols, but unlike the tank, this attack takes 2 turns and only hits 1 person in our party, and doesn't even do that much damage. Last is Hell to the Empire, which increases his attack power, so this one can make the fight hard. But if you take him out quickly, it's nothing to worry about. Overall, this fight is easy. You heal every couple turns, and then all out attack otherwise until he runs out of health, and you win the fight. Once we defeat him, we get 1200 to 1500 experience for the fight, and 241 to 303 TP for winning. These are important boss fights, so the payout is really good right now when it comes to experience. Once we win, he tells us that we must face his wrath, and then he says goodbye, and he leaves using a staircase that was hidden before. We have to follow him to find Linear and take him down for good. We catch up with Eugene on a bridge that's part of the ship, and he tells Mag about how his father found Evolutia and that it's linear, and that he was also surprised that it could be a living thing. Then he says with her power, people can become gods. Mag is confused but doesn't care about that. He says that Linear is his friend and he's there to save her. We run closer to him, but a soldier blows part of the bridge up, and we have to retreat before he shoots us and takes us out. Mag mentions seeing a different path to the other side when looking around the ship before, and then that's what we end up doing. Once we take the path, we come across Linear. She's handcuffed and we tell her that we're going to save her and get her out of there. But Eugene sneaks up behind us on his big mech robot and tells us that he's going to kill us, and then he attacks us. This fight is against Prince Eugene because adding a mech makes you a prince. He's level 20 in this fight and is actually challenging. He starts the fight with an attack called Fire Rolling Bomb. This attack is from a minigun on the front of the mech, and it shoots bullets at the whole party. It doesn't do that much damage, but it chips away over time, and if he uses it back to back, it could be a problem. There is also a small chance that this move will cause us to fall asleep, and that doesn't help anything. He uses an attack called Nail, which is just a basic physical attack with the arm of the mech, and this does no damage to us at all. I don't know why this attack is even in this boss fight, to be honest. The third attack he has is called Knockdown. Using the mech, he grabs a party member and then slams them to the ground. It does pretty good damage and is something to watch out for in the front row during the fight. The last attack is called Entrifwafi. Yet again, I know I messed up how to say that. But this attack shoots a missile at the party and explodes, causing damage to everyone. I actually had Pepper knocked out after this attack during the end of the fight, and I was worried I wasn't going to be able to win. I decided to approach this fight with Pepper healing the party because she would miss a lot of her attacks early in the fight, and then just having Chain and Mag attack using blade and hammer skills to do massive damage. If we didn't have FP to use skills, then we would just attack normally. If it ever got too bad, I would use an item and heal the whole party to stay safe. Towards the end of the fight, I was out of items, I wasn't able to heal, and I was struggling, but I got lucky. I was able to hit some massive attacks to get him into flashing red health, and then he decided to use Knockdown on Pepper, putting her in really low health, and then used Nail on Mag, putting him in low health, but didn't bother to take either one of them out, so I was able to attack with my whole party, and Chain got the final attack to win the fight. The mech explodes, and we're given 1600 to 2000 XP, and 404 to 505 TP for the fight. Once we come out of the battlefield, we get a cutscene where the party says that we have to leave. Mag tells them to leave ahead of him. He has to untie Linear, and then they will make their way out of the ship. We then get to play with him again and run out of the ship. Once we get outside of the ship, we get another cutscene where we're about to get on a lifeboat, and then Mag gets shot in the back by who else but Eugene. He's still alive, and he seems perfectly fine. He goes on to talk about how powerful Evolutia will make him, and then he notices Linear and tries to get her to come on the boat with him. When she refuses, he pulls out a gun and counts down, basically telling her to get on the boat or he's going to shoot her. When he gets to 3, Mag's Psy-Frame hand comes out and slaps Eugene off the boat. Mag asks Linear if she's okay, and then he tells her not to worry, because nothing he could have done to him would hurt him. And then he passes back out and Linear embraces him. The army ship begins to explode and it switches to an FMV. In this FMV, it shows that the plane got off the ship with Gray, Chain, and Pepper inside. They're circling the fiery remains of the ship in the ocean, thinking the worst thing happened to both Mag and Linear. Out of the fire, giant gold wings appear and blow all the smoke and fire away. It's Linear holding Mag in her wings, as our party, Eugene, and the army all look on. Mag wakes up and notices that she saved them. She finally talks and asks him if he's okay, which he responds with a thumbs up, and then they embrace. Gray catches them on the seaplane before they fall into the ocean, and the screen turns into a monument from the beginning of the game, and then fades to black. Then it comes back from black, and there is a figure in a cutscene floating in the darkness, with just this little bit of light on it. Its eyes open red, and it just says Linear, and it fades back to black. 6 months later, we get a cutscene that shows a train leaving town, and on the back of the train is Linear and Gray looking at the tracks. And we can only wonder why until it shows Mag sprinting down the tracks trying to catch up to the train. He was late getting there, and now he has to run to catch up. He finally does catch up, and he leaps onto the back of the train. He made it. Once inside, we get lectured about being late from Gray, but it's nothing too serious. And without missing a beat, comes into the car we're in and yells at us about being late. And it doesn't look good for us, since she told President Whitehead that we're the #1 adventurer in Pan Am Town. We also find out that the train is heading to Museville, the hub for the rest of the game. We ask about our assignment, but she doesn't know the details, just knows that it's important. We're interrupted by the sound of an intruder alarm on the train. We don't really know what this means, but it gives us the ability to walk around the train and head to the front to figure out what is going on. On our way there, we run into Chain. She wouldn't miss this for a second. Once we get to the front of the train is actually forced to stop, and some bandits enter the train. 2 henchmen and a man named Carcano. He's a Psyframe user and is a known bandit that steals treasure and artifacts from the society. So we have to fight him. I would love to tell you about this fight and it being difficult and we need to watch out for specific moves, but he's extremely underleveled at this point and we end the fight within a couple turns. I know this is actually the beginning of the second game, but you would think they would at least raise the level of Carcano for this fight, at least just a little bit. After defeating him, he tells us that because of our courage, he'll retire from the train for now and leaves. We ask Nina about him and we find out that he actually stole some appraisal items from the train, so fighting him was a decoy for robbing the train. When we finally get to Museville, Nina tells us that we can stay at the hotel for the night and then come tomorrow morning to the society to meet with President Whitehead. We're given this time to walk around the new city of Museville. This city is much larger than Pan Am Town, but for the most part has all the same things here. We can upgrade Psyframes, buy items and equipment, stay at the hotel, and even play the lottery to try and win some items. Nothing too different, just larger in scale. We head back to the hotel and go to bed for the night. In the morning, Gray tells us that we got a message to meet President Whitehead at the Society Museum, which is on the far side of town. We head over there and we finally get to meet him. He introduces himself to us about how he runs the society and that they're collecting these secret items, and Carcano was able to steal one of them off the train yesterday. We're being trusted to head into different runes to collect the rest of them, starting with the Blaze runes. He tells us that for everyone that we can bring back, that he will pay us handsomely. Before we head to the Blaze runes, I want to mention that there is a tower known as the Tower of Despair. This tower gives little experience, but gives a bunch of training points to upgrade your character's skills and talents. We can also find items for every 10 floors we complete. We can only do so much of it before we have to advance the plot, however, but we did go in and do the first 10 floors of the tower, and then I just never went back after that. I just wanted to mention it because it is a good way to get your character's skills unlocked. At the end of the 10th floor, I was able to find a Psyframe called Megaphone, which was not one that I liked very much, so I didn't end up using it after a couple fights. If we head to the southern part of Museville, we can leave the town and head out to the runes. It will show all the runes that are available to us at this point, and we can come and go as we please. I like this because we needed a specific item or wanted to grind before a fight. It's not as hard as it is in the first part of the game. Anyways, we decide we're ready to go to the Blaze runes and select that. I'm not sure why this is called Blaze runes because it doesn't look like fire or that it ever even seen fire. It's a wooden floor, the stone pillars in the area that you can break and find items inside of them. I decided to bring the party of Mag, Linear, and Gray for this one, for no other reasons than I have been switching every dungeon at this point in the game. When we get inside, there are only 5 floors to this dungeon, and it's actually very easy because we are a much higher level than anything in the dungeon, even the boss at the end. Anyways, we can find 4 enemies in this dungeon: the Escargold, the Flying Mouse, the Flycatcher, and the Panzer Beetle. They range from level 11 to 13, so as I mentioned, it's nothing to worry about. When we get to the 5th floor, we have to jump on a button and open the door to the boss room. When we enter, we all walk in a straight line as close to one another as possible for some weird reason. This happens every boss fight in the runes. I don't understand it. It's super weird. We walk towards the massive treasure chest, but before we can get to it, we're attacked by the boss and the blaze runes. This boss is known as the Stormbird. It's a flying bird that looks a bit like a crane or a stork. It's only level 16 and doesn't pose much of a threat to us. The first attack that you'll see is this thing called Gust. It's a wind attack that does very little damage to all the characters in your party, but moves everyone to the back row, causing our damage output to be much lower. The second attack this thing uses is called Wind Breath, which is basically the same attack, but this one does way more damage. It feels a bit lazy that both attacks are the same in my opinion though. The Stormbird can also just do a standard attack where it flies over to one of our party members and scratches them with its talons. It doesn't do much damage to any of my characters, but I could see this one doing much more damage if I was a lower level. My strategy in this fight was to power up Mag with both Linear and Gray's skills, and then just let Mag hit the bird with his hammer attack, causing massive damage. We're 6 levels higher than this boss, so this worked to perfection, and we were able to take the Stormbird out in only a few turns. Once we defeat the Stormbird, we receive 1100 to 1400 experience and 65 to 83 training points. Much lower than the previous, but it's still pretty good. After the fight, we're celebrating, but the bird isn't actually dead and tries to attack us while we're not paying attention. This is when Pepper shows up to take it out for good and to save the party. She tells us that she'll come with us and she'll be at the restaurant across from the hotel if we want her to come with us. Then she leaves and we go and grab the giant treasure chest. When we open it, a blue orb comes out and we get an FMV showing a path and a tunnel and then the outside of what looks like a big city in the middle of the ocean. We come back to Mag and he's just like, oh well, and grabs the lapis orb to take back to President Whitehead. We take it back to Whitehead and he tells us that our reward is at reception. It's just money at this point and we just head back to the hotel to end the day. When we check in at the hotel, we get a cutscene of Linear playing the ocarina on the balcony of the hotel. Mag, Chain, and Gray decide to head to bed, and then we get another cutscene where Linear is outside in the garden of the hotel in the morning, and a mysterious boy comes up to her and begins to talk to her. He tells Linear that he just had to meet her, and he introduces himself as Yurka. He tells us that it's okay if we don't remember who he is, but he came to leave his mark on her, just like she left her mark on him. He tells her that he'd be back to see her without fail, and then teleports away, ending the cutscene with just a feather flying through the air. Mag wakes up and meets with Linear, and we head over to Whitehead's office to get our next assignment. This time we're heading into the forest depths to find another treasure similar to the one we found in Blaze Runes. We head back to Museville and grab Chain to bring her along with us for this assignment, and we head south out of town and go to the forest depths. This dungeon has a forest feel to it. There are vines, grass, dirt, and trees in the area that feels like we're actually traversing through a forest. This dungeon is a bit larger than the last one and has 10 floors. This one is still easy, but the levels of the enemies are starting to catch up to us in this dungeon. The enemies we can find in the forest depths are the Escargold, the Crawfish, the Man-Eater, the Poison Flower, the Totem Pole, the Statue, the Ostwin, and the Lynx. They range from levels 12 to 22, the Totem Pole being the highest level normal enemy in the dungeon. Our first Psy-Frame upgrade is in this dungeon. It's an item we can find that will allow for us to upgrade the level of our Psy-Frame, making them stronger and opening more slots for the Psy-Frame parts. So we want to make sure that we grab that one while in the dungeon. Once we get to the 10th floor, we have to jump on a button again to open the door to the boss room, and then we walk single file inside to find another treasure chest waiting for us to open it. We get attacked by the boss of the forest depths before we can open up the treasure chest, and now we have a fight on our hands. The boss for the forest depth is called Blocker, and it's at level 25. I'm not sure how to explain what Blocker is. It just reminds me of a robot that has 2 arms with fingers on the end of them. I'm not sure what it is exactly, so if you know, let me know down in the comments below. Our party is level 27 and 28, so we have a few levels over them, meaning this fight shouldn't be a problem either. Its first attack that it hits us with is called Chest Beam. This move is very strong. It does almost 400 damage and shoots a laser at one character, causing them to explode, and it does massive damage. It's something to at least watch out for. The second attack is called Spiral Upper. This attack targets one character and puts them in a tornado of wind, causing them to take damage. He missed this attack, so I don't know how much damage it would have done to Mag. I would assume around 300 or so, maybe. The last attack we have to worry about is his standard attack. Blocker shoots bullets out of his hand at one character, and it does decent damage. My strategy in this fight was to have Mag do massive damage with his strongest attacks. Chain can attack normally unless we need to use an item, and we just had Linear sit back and heal if we needed it. If not, she would attack normally to regain FP. This worked well for me, and we were able to finish this fight in just a few turns as well. For winning the fight, we get experience between 3,000 to 3,800, and get TP from 161 to 204, which was actually way better than the last one, and closer to what we got for the tank fight at the beginning of the game. After the fight, we grab the treasure and get another FMV that shows the same tunnel, but this time we get a bunch of words on the screen and an image of the monument from the beginning of the game. And then we come back to Mag. Yet again, he brushes us off, and we collect the Selene Orb. We return it to President Whitehead and give him the orb, and then he thanks us and gives us the reward money for finding it. Nothing different here, but after we leave, we get another cutscene showing that President Whitehead is talking to Yurka. Whitehead talks about how he has 3 keys now, and he just needs to get the rest of them. And then he asks Yurka where they're located. Yurka doesn't say anything and just talks about how the seal is about to be broken, and then the scene ends. We get another cutscene at the hotel, and Yurka shows up on the balcony with Linear and shows her that he can kill flowers like she heals flowers. And then Mag comes out and tells her to come inside or she will catch a cold. The next morning we head back to the Society Museum and talk to President Whitehead. He gives us our next assignment. This one is for the dungeon called Crypt Maze, and he also decides to be nice, and he gives us a larger backpack so that we can hold more stuff, which is super nice of him because we've been finding a bunch of items in the dungeon and not having the space to carry any of them. We head to the south of Museville and make our way to Crypt Maze. This dungeon is just stone and more stones. It's all gray and this doesn't have any appeal at all. The enemies that we can find in the Crypt Maze are the Conodont, Mastodont, Chestnut, Rocknut, Havoc, Hyde, Shadow, Monitor, X-Monitor, Rhinoceros, and the Superhorn. They range from level 19 to 36, so this is the highest levels and the largest range. This dungeon has 15 floors, and it will take a while to get through when playing the game. I should mention that there are parts of this level that have ice that we have to slide on. That's really the only difference. Once we get to the 15th floor, we get to fight the boss for this area. The boss for this dungeon is called Pomnoric and is level 37. He's just a red robot, nothing special about the design. And the first attack it does is called Freeze Volley, and it shoots ice shards at each party member. These then turn into ice that shoots out of the ground and hits everyone, which would kill them if this was real life. This attack does really good damage, so it's something to watch out for in the future, but it doesn't come with any status effects, so that's nice. His second attack is called Vice Press. He moves towards a party member and hits them with his robot arm 3 times. It causes our character to look smashed for a second, and then does really good damage. Our health is much higher now, so this isn't much of a problem though. His last attack doesn't have a name. He just rides at one of the character and slams into them. This causes the character to move to the back row, but it doesn't really do any damage. My strategy is the same in this fight with all fights. Use Pepper and Linear to heal, use Linear to increase Mag's attack, and have Mag use his Hammer Psyframe to attack on every turn. This isn't a long fight and isn't that hard either. Just stay healthy and always attack, and this boss will go down easily. Once we land the final hit, it explodes and we get 6,000 to 7,500 experience and 305 to 385 training points. A nice haul for how long this dungeon was. We get another FMV of a mech of some sort, and then a massive explosion, and then we're able to collect the Amber Orb. We head back to President Whitehead and give the Amber Orb to him and collect our money. We then get another cutscene at night where Mag and Linear are on the balcony, and Linear is waiting for Yurka. Mag asks her who Yurka is, and she tells him that it's her first friend from Museville, and that she will introduce us to him. Then we head inside for bed. The next morning, we head to see President Whitehead, and he tells us that Carcano has stolen all the items we've collected in the dungeons. We find out that they had put trackers on the treasures, and that he took them back to the bandit hideout in Pine Village. He asks us to go there and collect the treasures. We tell him that we will, and then we leave. We grab Pepper to come with us and head to the south of Museville and make our way there. We arrive at the bandits hideout, and the party talks about how they feel like they're being watched, and we need to be careful. After looking around for a while, we find him in the back room of the hideout. He tells us that he's surprised that we found him there, and then he tells us that he isn't returning the treasure, and he drops us into the basement of the hideout, which ends up being the next dungeon. He thinks he has guts, and he tells his men that we'll get out with no problem. It comes back to us, and we can take control and start the dungeon of Pine Village. Since this is the prison for the hideout, there are spike traps and enemies everywhere. It's just dirt mostly, so nothing special about this one either. This dungeon is very easy and super short compared to the last few that we've been doing. We only have 4 enemies that we can encounter: the Burgessia, Palin Lobster, Death Mushroom, and the Saber Lynx in this area. The enemies range from level 26 to 34, so they're much lower level than us at this point. After looking around for a while, we get out and catch back up with Carcano. He tells us that he isn't returning the treasures and we're going to have to fight him to get him back. The next boss fight is Carcano and his 2 henchmen. This time though, the fight is a little bit more difficult. Carcano is level 35 and each of the henchmen are level 34. I'm just going to talk about Carcano because the henchmen aren't good and are nothing to worry about. I literally took them out on my first attack. The first attack that Carcano does is him running up to one of our characters and just punching them. This does no damage to us because we're so much higher level than him. The next attack he does is called Drill Attack, and he runs up and he hits a character and stabs them with the drill a bunch of times, and this causes them to shoot up into the air. It doesn't do much damage, so I guess this fight is still very easy. My strategy for this fight is to just attack with Mag. It's easy, so he eventually faints and we win the fight. We get 6,200 to 7,800 experience and 383 to 479 training points. So for how easy this fight is, it's a lot of experience. After the fight, Carcano tells us that we can have the treasures back, but it's getting late, so we should just stay the night to be safe. We decide to stay the night. Mag hears his name being called and goes outside to meet with Yurka on the bridge. Yurka tells us that we need to stay away from Linear, and then he attacks us. Linear steps in and tells him to stop, and then Yurka tries to get her to come with him. We head back inside, and Linear stays outside for the time being and is just worried about Mag's safety. Carcano notices that there is tension between Linear and Mag, and he tells us that we need to make up quickly, and then gives us the bandit symbol so that we can use the shops there from now on, and the bandit backpack so we can hold even more items now. These are both extremely helpful. We can leave now and head back to town. We return all the items to Professor Whitehead, and he tells us that our next assignment is available at reception. We then get another cutscene between Yurka and President Whitehead. Whitehead tells Yurka that he has all 4 keys now. Yurka tells him it's almost time to unlock the secrets, but before that, he heads back to the hotel and convinces Linear that she is a burden to Mag, and the only way to feel better about the situation is for her to come with him. She decides to do that and leaves her ocarina on the balcony. The next morning, Gray tells Mag that he found her ocarina and that she is missing. Mag tells them that they need to find her, and then Jane comes up and tells them that she's seen her heading to the Society Museum with some random person. We make the decision to head there right away. Then we get another cutscene of Whitehead, Yurka, and Linear opening up some sort of portal. Whitehead is excited to go, but then Yurka attacks him and tells him that he's not needed anymore. And then Yurka and Linear enter the portal. When it comes back to Mag and company, we find out that the doors are locked to the museum. Since we can't get inside, we decide that Carcano might be able to break in. We head back to the bandit's hideout and ask him to help us. He tells us that he will, and now we're able to bring him along with us. He has the Canon Spike Psyframe, and since we get him so late in the game, I never used him for anything. We can pick our party before heading into the dungeon. I chose to bring Chain and Pepper with me because I've been using them the most as of recent, and they're stronger than the rest of the people in the party. When we come inside, Whitehead tells us what happened and that he's sorry and the portal is dangerous. We decide to go inside anyways, and we can start the final dungeon of the game. This dungeon is called Society Dungeon, and it looks like we're in some sort of computer simulator or something. It's all high-tech and computer-like inside. This dungeon has 25 floors, so buckle up when playing this one. In this dungeon, we can encounter a bunch of enemies. The enemies we can encounter on the first 15 floors are the Patroller, Bomb Pod, Hummer, Gun Pod, Ganga, Staghound, Press Arm, and the Big Arm. These enemies range from the level of 36 to 50. I would recommend doing some grinding in this area because the bosses in this dungeon are very difficult. Once we get to the 16th floor, we get another cutscene where Yurka and Linear are unlocking a door for the second half of the dungeon. We get our first boss fight with Yurka. This fight is actually hard and was the first time in the game I actually almost lost a fight. Yurka is very strong and packs a crazy punch with all of his attacks doing a lot of damage. He starts the fight with just a standard attack where he waves his arms and then hits you with like floating swords. This attack only hits one member in your party, but this does nearly 800 damage on Pepper, and she's in the back row. His second attack is called Natural Disaster, and this causes 4 giant boulders to show up and crush everyone in our party. This does massive damage and almost takes Pepper out, with her health being low from the previous attack. His next attack is called Spellbound Blindness, and this attack causes these dark sword things to appear and attack the whole row. So I had Chain and Mag in the same row, and they both took damage during this attack. This attack isn't all that strong and only does around 600 damage, but it hits both people in the row, so it's something to keep an eye out for. Yurka has another attack called Time to Freeze Solid, and this attack doesn't do any damage, but it slows your party members down. I was lucky to have it miss on everyone but Mag in this attempt, but moving slower and getting less attacks can become a problem when trying to heal. His next attack is called Absorb Life, and this attack allows for him to make copies of himself, surround one of our party members, and take health from them and heal himself using it. This is annoying, but it doesn't take that much health at least, so the healing isn't a problem. My strategy for this fight was to attack with Chain and Mag and have Pepper heal us as much as she could with skills and items. It really sucks that we don't have Linear with us at this point, because she can heal everyone at the same time with her skills. So I continued to attack when I could and healed when I needed, even taking turns away from attacking to heal using Mag and Chain. I was super underleveled, and this is why I would recommend grinding at least a little bit before coming into this fight. After a really long fight with Yurka, we're able to land the final blow and win the fight. This was really difficult, and he sort of just faints afterwards. For completing the fight, we get 19,000 to 24,000 experience, which is a ton, and we get 483 training points for winning the fight. This was a very good payout, but that fight was bad because of how underleveled I was for it. After the fight, we get a cutscene where we ask where Linear is, and he tells us that we just don't understand what's happening. We get an FMV talking about how the ancient civilization had so much power, and all that they understand was destruction and regeneration. It's just a history lesson of Linear and Yurka. Linear shows up, and then they both fly away, and we yell after them. After they leave, Whitehead, Carcano, and Gray show up. And Whitehead ends up leaving a portal so that we can come back to the 16th floor whenever we want. That gets us through a lot of this dungeon. When we move forward, the dungeon changes the way it looks, however. It has blue carpet on the ground, and the walls are a teal-gray color. These floors have different enemies, too. We can encounter the Orthnisaurus, the Allosaurus, the Kenburn, the spider, and the giant spider. Their levels will range from 48 to 60. I recommend grinding because the next fight can't be done if you're too low of a level to take out the final boss. We need to make it to floor 25 to fight the last boss of the game. But before we can do that, we get an FMV where a mech comes out of the ground and enters the top of the dungeon. This is the ulti cannon, and it's being controlled by both Linear and Yurka. Starts shooting lasers at us, but Mag isn't afraid of them and decides to play Linear's ocarina to get her to snap out of the trance that she's under. She realizes what's happening, tells us that she's sorry, but she doesn't want to burden us. Mag tells her that she isn't a burden, and that wins her over. She ejects from the mech, and Yurka has a meltdown about how she's leaving him alone, and the mech turns into this dark form. I guess like an evil version of it. And then he decides that he is going to attack us. So let's move on to the fight with the ulti cannon. This thing is level 65 and is very hard. I actually lost my very first fight in the entire game to this thing because I was under level and couldn't handle the attacks. So let's look at all those attacks. The first attack he uses is Sublimation of Humanity, and this attack has him create these white lines that go through a whole row of our party, and then it turns into a pink portal thing that does damage. It's around 1,000 damage on each party member it hits in the same row. It's something we have to watch out for because it will take us down quickly if the whole party is being hit by it. The next attack it does is called Life Weakening Beam, and this attack has him shooting a laser out of his hand at one of our party members. This will damage them, but it also lowers their defense. An attack that doesn't do much damage, but the lowering of our defense can become a problem with his other attacks. The next attack is called Gravity Free, and this attack causes a massive rock to come out of the ground below our whole party, lifting them up into the air, and then slamming them back down to the ground, doing massive damage to everyone. This attack is not friendly and actually causes Chain to get knocked out on this turn, so we're going to need to heal her as quickly as we can. He also has a basic attack that hits everyone in the party as well, but this one doesn't do that much damage. So honestly, we want this attack to happen more than any of his other attacks that he'll use during this fight. A little bit of RNG in this fight will help us out in the long run. Another attack that he has is called Temptation to Sleep, and this attack shoots a beam of light at us, doing pretty decent damage, but the real issue with this one is that it can cause our party members to fall asleep, which can be a problem. This attack hits everyone, so there isn't really a way to avoid this one, just something we need to be cautious of. My strategy in this fight isn't much different than all the other boss fights in the game. I attacked with Chain and Mag when I could, always attacking with Mag unless I needed to heal right away. I would use their best skills with their psi frames to dish out the most damage I could as quickly as possible. I had Pepper heal and do nothing else. She didn't attack a single time during this fight, only healing to stay alive and to restore FP. This worked well with items, and eventually after a long time fighting him, I was able to land the final attack on him, ending the fight. The ulti cannon explodes and we win. Since this is the last fight of the game, we get 0 experience for this fight, but still get 772 to 965 training points for winning. I don't understand that. After the fight, we get to see the ulti cannon explode fully after floating into the air. And then Yurka comes back down to the ground softly, but he's really hurt from the fight and the explosion. We run over to him and he tells us that he's sorry, but he only had Linear, and that Mag was right about destruction not being the only way. Linear tries to heal him, but her healing doesn't work on him. Mag tells him that he'll be okay and that we can all live together as friends. Chain and Pepper tell him that they would be friends with him too. He's excited about the idea of having friends. Linear is crying, but there is nothing they can do, and Yurka ends up dying, and then he floats away like he's going to heaven or something. And then the scene fades to black. When it comes back, we're at the Museville train station and we're getting ready to leave to head back home. Gray explains the ending of the game to us again. But he also mentions that mist and darkness are still around, so our job isn't done. But this is a big step to our evolution as a person. Whitehead shows up and tells us that he will continue his research, but only for the good now. He tells us that he will give us first class tickets for the train, or that he'd even charter the whole thing for us. Then he mentions that Linear isn't with us, and Gray tells us that she is back at the hotel, and we should go get her so she doesn't miss the train. So that's what we end up doing. We head back to the hotel. When we get to the hotel, Linear's outside by the tree. When we go up to her, we tell her that the train is about to leave and we need to go. Then tell her that if we ever meet Yurka again, he knows that we would all be friends. Then we give her a gift for her birthday with a note. It states that he got this for her a while ago, but there was never a good time to give it to her. And the reason that he was late for the train on the very first day to Museville is because he was wrapping her gift. She seems really happy. They then embrace in a hug. And then the screen goes black and we get the credits. After the credits, we get another scene on the train talking about how Mag got a letter with a bill for the hotel of $30,000. And that the hotel sent it to the society and they added it to our debt. So we're in debt again with them. We laugh it off a bit, but now we have to go and explore more runes. And then finally we get a screen showing our ranking for the game. We didn't do a bunch of the game, but we got a ranking of B on this one, so I'm not complaining. That's the end of Evolution Worlds. We finished the game. Would I recommend this game? I would recommend this game because I had a bunch of fun with this one. The dungeons are a bit underwhelming, but I liked the battle system and the story was good. So this is a recommendation for me. But let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what's next, stick around, but if not, thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe, like, and share this video, and we'll see you in the next one. This up. So I already preset this. We have 522 games left. We have our game list of what we will end up playing next. And on the count of 3, we will find out what that game is. So 3, 2, 1. We got 463, which is Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. I've done a Tom Clancy's before. It was okay. That is a complete change of pace. Take that out.